Good morning, everyone. And on behalf of Councilman Dow and Councilman Jeff Johnson, who are at the meeting that I'm playing hooky from, please don't tell the council president or the council clerk. It's a real privilege to be here with you this morning. I was thinking when I was driving over here in my head, all of the annual meetings that I've had the privilege to attend, not only as a council person, but also as someone who came back to Cleveland after having been born and raised in this most phenomenal neighborhood, and having been born on East 74th Street in St. Clair. Michael, you have done an amazing job. And I know you would be the first person to say that it's you and your staff and your board. And I just think you are fantastic. And you are spectacular, and your staff who's here is spectacular, and your entire team is my family has personally enjoyed so many of your pop-ups. I was actually at Curentovania on the back of a float with those creatures that didn't scare my daughter but scared me. And you know, in only the way that neighborhood we were born and raised in can you have someone speak to you the way they do. And I saw a gentleman who I hadn't seen in a long time, and he had met my daughter for the first time, and she said to me, "Daddy, he's so sweet, he's so nice, he's so wonderful." And of course he gave her candy. And then the gentleman said to me in Slovenian, "Does it take a parade to get you to come back to your neighborhood where you were born?" And I always think about that because there is never a more honest moment that I have in my life than when I get the chance to interact with so many of you, and I appreciate that. There's a great saying in Latin that goes, "Dum spiro spiro." Dum spiro spiro. And in Latin that is translated into, "I breathe, therefore I hope." I have a very personal relationship and feeling with this room, with each and every one of you, whether I've met you or not, for a few reasons. When I try to explain to my daughter and my son now why they live in the greatest city in America, I have to think about all those cold winter mornings that I was walking to St. Vitus Grade School from the corner of East 74th and Corman down to the corner of East 61st and Glass, now Lauschie. And I can remember the smell of roasting coffee, and if you've ever smelled that, it smells like burnt toast. And I remember the smell of diesel from all the trucks that were coming from the phenomenal industries. And I remember walking along St. Clair, and you know sometimes when it's one of those cold, bright, sunny winter days, and all you see is salt dust, because the road is dry and it sparkles. My God, we have a beautiful neighborhood. And when I think about those memories, I think about the fact that here in this room, so many of the things we're talking about are the nitty-gritty, inch by inch of how we get things done, right? How do we get new awnings on a business? How do we help the newest hair salon move in here? How do we recognize a place like Rose Ironworks, which for us is a neighbor, but for the world is one of the finest places where metalcraft is done? How do we do that? How do we hold both things at the same time? And I think about the fact that in our own bylaws, because of the way funding is, we have to put in there something that is so human and so venial as boundaries. The boundaries that this neighborhood serves. Those boundaries don't exist. This neighborhood is Cleveland. This neighborhood imports and exports Cleveland every single day. And I think about that, whether it's Michael, Cynthia, James, the entire staff. Being in St. Clair-Superior isn't being in a specific CDC boundary. It's not being in a part of the city. It's not the way that we in politics divide in order to serve, sometimes to conquer. Being in St. Clair means being in a St. Clair-Superior state of mind. It is so ironic that we are in this building. I remember first walking with Radhika Reddy in here and dodging pigeons. And Mayor Jackson was here, and I thought, dear God, please don't let one of those pigeons poop on you. Because what I wanted to see happen was what Radhika saw happen, and all that we could see then was the vision of one person to create this space, this fantastic space. It's like the flowers on our tables. What is the magic of St. Clair-Superior? What is the mythology of our community? You can go to cities like Providence, Rhode Island, where they will tell you that their economic benefits derive exactly from the fact that when America was turning its back on Jewish people, when America was turning its back on Catholics, when America was saying to African Americans, you can eat here or go to the bathroom here, Providence, Rhode Island was saying, we are a city of welcome. Their mythology was a place where all were held close, regardless of your class, your race, your creed, anything that we use in America to divide ourselves. So it got me to thinking, after I visited Providence, Rhode Island, what's our mythology here? We're a neighborhood where things are made. We're a neighborhood where things are made again. Just look at the centerpieces on your table. Had Michael not told us that that was from what most people would throw away and discard, would we really know what Nicole McGee has done, which is to create those beautiful flowers out of something that somebody else would have cast off? It reminds me so much of the scriptures in the Old Testament, of Isaiah 58. Let us be the rebuilders of the ruined homesteads, the bringers of life to the abandoned cities. What St. Clair-Superior offers, what's in front of us, the lake, what's to the left of us, downtown, what's to the right of us, the rest of the city, is an example of what happens when people forget that that core being in this neighborhood, our spirit, our soul, is dum spiro spiro. Foreclosure crisis, changing of manufacturing, people leaving the neighborhood, people coming to the neighborhood. I go to a lot of community meetings. I go to way too many annual meetings. There is no room that is more diverse than this one. There is no room that is more Cleveland than this one. There is no room that is more strength and honor and believing in itself, and I would say sacred than this one. And maybe it's because from here I can see the beautiful steeples of Immaculate Conception. Maybe I can see the water towers at the Tower Press. Maybe I can still remember as a kid feeling the boom, ba-boom, ba-boom from Sifco. And knowing that being in this neighborhood is a 5-sense experience. Maybe it's from the fact that more artists live in this neighborhood now than anywhere else, including neighborhoods that brand themselves as artist neighborhoods, because this neighborhood does, it doesn't just say. Maybe it's because when people come from national foundations and federations, and I'm sitting with Michael and so many of the artists in this room saying to them, we are worth funding, and they fund us after an intensely national competitive process, it says to me that maybe that spirit that we are putting out there is being reflected back to us. A few ironies this morning. We have a photographer here. He's in the back. He's a wonderful gentleman. He's going to hate that I'm calling him out. His name is Mr. Katika. He happens to be the City Hall photographer. He also happens to be a citizen of St. Clair-Superior. How fitting it is that the pictures that our world sees of Cleveland come from the eyes of someone who lives on East 31st Street. How fitting that the future of our city comes from someone whose vision wakes and goes to rest in our community. And so when I think about all of the things that we could talk about today, the international model of excellence of St. Martin de Porres High School, a place where failure is not an option. When I think about the industries that are being honored today, like Sifco, and so many of the other companies that are here who provide the jobs and the economic industrial backbone for our community. When I think of residents like Zach Byrne, who are being honored, or residents like Diane Kearns, it reminds me of the stories that I tell other people when you all aren't in this room. Quick story about Diane. Diane will be the first to remind us that her work that she has done on Edna was so much a part of her collaboration with another Diane named Diane Stimley. And is a perfect example of a neighborhood that is more about Easter Sunday than Good Friday, that is more about the new year than last year. I think about that which brought them together, which was a horrific home that burned with a child who passed away, of a vacant lot that sat between them for years. But we're St. Clair-Superior. We don't just grieve over our wounds or remember that which hurt us. We take that which others cast away, and as we dum spiro spiro, we breathe, we hope. And so Diane Kearns and her neighbor Diane Stimley have become national models for what you do with vacant land that most people would have run from. And what people will tell you is this neighborhood embraces. We embrace our diversity, we embrace that which binds us together. And I think about the fact that we're honoring people who are just so iconic in this community. I have to be very careful I've been on council now for 15 years. And I am losing my ability sometimes to be diplomatic. It's hard when you have to be nice all the time or say the right thing all the time. So please allow me a moment of personal confession. Last week I had the privilege with the St. Clair-Superior team and so many of you of being at the Stannard Farm dedication. We didn't just have one national leader of Dr. Gordon Gee from Ohio State there. We also had Dr. Terry Ryan, who was here from the Cuyahoga County Board of Developmental Disabilities. And all of you may remember, and my friend Yvonne Conwell, who's our county council person, can tell you, and she remembers, there is no more dangerous place to be than at the front of a room when St. Clair-Superior residents come armed with bricks that have fallen off of a building. But we didn't just sit on that building. Working with this community, with this organization, not only did that building come down and we were able to plant a community garden, a community farm, but over 75% of that building was recycled into neighbors' yards for brick patios, into tabletops and cutting boards. Why? Because that's what St. Clair-Superior does. What? We make things. How? We rise from that which others would walk away from, because as we breathe, we hope. And I got very emotional. And thank God Councilman Jeff Johnson was there and told me to get a hold of myself. But the truth was, I couldn't fake the fact that that could not happen in any other neighborhood but ours. And I happen to represent some pretty awesome neighborhoods, but that was such a moment of personal pride. It was a moment where I saw a whole community of people who didn't just wait for the bricks to fall, but said, what are we going to do with it? Reminds me a little bit about how the artists in our community get together to do things like neighborhood cleanups, working with 2100 Lakeside like they did this past weekend. It reminds me of this organization called UCAN that brings all of our artists together in a journal to tell people the story inside out. Who's the person who not only helped fund that, but put together that beautiful journal? He happens to be a St. Clair-Superior citizen. His name is Wally Lancey from Consolidated Graphics. Time and time and time again, the story of our resurrection comes from the people who stick it out here, who make this their home, who make this their way of life, who teach others that this is a St. Clair-Superior state of mind. And so, whether I'm now able to, as an old man, enjoy Asia Town with all the wonderful festivals that we have, Cudentovania and Cleveland Flea, when I see the neighborhood as it is now, I have to share with you a moment of too much personal information. I so wish my mom and dad were here to see the neighborhood that they gave me as one of the greatest gifts of my life. You are who this neighborhood was intended to be. This is our destiny. And when so many people are working together for the right cause, at the right time, for our kids, for our seniors, for our African American brothers and sisters, from our brothers and sisters who come from West Virginia, or Slovenia, or Puerto Rico, or the faraway lands of Strongsville and Westlake. This is what God intended. And so, on this podium, looking out through Cleveland, I see this beautiful city as a son of St. Clair-Superior through your lens and your eyes. All I can tell you is this: whatever you're doing is working. However you're doing is working it. And by working together and working with our phenomenal team and our leadership and recognizing the beauty in the brokenness and what others would cast off, this neighborhood continues to not only be a neighborhood of a light on a hill, but it continues to be a place of hopeful, breath-filled, God-loving, blessed inspiration. I think I speak for Councilman T.J. Dow and Councilman Jeff Johnson and Mayor Jackson when I say that it is such an honor to serve you. It is such a challenge to live up to your ideals. And thank you so much for helping me realize that the reason that my parents raised me on East 74th in St. Clair was to be alive in this place at this moment. God bless you for all you do.